"You're not welcome here anymore, Dad." My son Brandon said it in front of 23 people at Christmas dinner, like I was a stranger who had wandered into his house by mistake. My granddaughter's smile disappeared. My grandson stopped tearing wrapping paper. Kelsey, my daughter-in-law, leaned back with that polished little grin she used when a deal was already done. I was 69 years old, but my hands didn't shake. I stood, buttoned my coat, and said, "I understand completely. Son." No shouting, no pleading, no warning. Because for 6 months, a recorder in my pocket had caught every cruel word, every forged form, every plan to declare me incompetent. And Brandon had forgotten one small detail. The house he just threw me out of was still mine. Legally. Completely. Helen died on a Thursday morning while rain tapped against the hospital window like somebody asking to come inside. Lung disease had taken 11 months to hollow out the woman who had filled my house with music, stubborn hope, and cinnamon coffee every Sunday. Brandon was 32 then, working entry-level insurance sales and pretending he was stronger than he was. The funeral cost $21,400. I paid it from the savings Helen and I had set aside for a train trip through the Rockies. Brandon cried beside her casket, and I put my arm around him because that was what fathers did. "Don't worry about money," I told him. "Just grieve your mother right." After that, he came home for a few weeks. A few weeks became 18 months. I cooked dinners, washed sheets, fixed the old furnace when he forgot to change the filter, and sat with him through the kind of silence only widowers and sons understand. I was grieving too, but I had promised Helen I would keep our boy standing. Then Kelsey arrived, smart, pretty, polished, a mortgage consultant with careful nails and careful words. Brandon came alive around her, so I ignored the way she looked through my little house like she was estimating resale value. When they married, I paid $14,800 for the reception because Brandon said they wanted to start properly. At the toast, he hugged me hard and whispered, "I'll never forget this, Dad." In spring 2021, they found the house on Cedar Ridge Drive. 4 bedrooms, 2-car garage, fenced yard, for $12,000. The bank wanted 20% down. Brandon stared into his coffee and admitted they were $82,400 short. I wrote the check. At closing, my attorney, Marion Holt, leaned close and said, "Elliot, keep the deed in your name until their credit stabilizes. Protect yourself first." So I did. Brandon and Kelsey walked out holding the keys, smiling like homeowners. They thanked me all the way home. But legally, every important piece of paper still had one name on it, mine. At first, Brandon's distance felt ordinary, the kind of drift that happens when a grown son builds his own house, his own marriage, his own calendar. He used to call every Tuesday and Saturday, usually while driving between clients, just to ask whether I had eaten dinner or if the furnace was still making that rattling sound. After Kelsey, Tuesday disappeared first, then Saturday became every other week. Then the calls came only when he needed my truck, my tools, or my checkbook. Kelsey never raised her voice. That was what made her dangerous. She smiled while saying things that left bruises. "Your dad means well," she told Brandon once, not knowing I could hear from the hallway. "But he's from another time. He doesn't understand boundaries." Brandon laughed softly. "Yeah. He still thinks advice is the same thing as helping." By Christmas 2021, they didn't speak to me anymore. They spoke around me. Helen used to say quiet men hear the truth first. So, I started listening very carefully now. The first weapon I bought was not a gun. It was a voice recorder the size of a pack of gum. I found it at Best Buy on a gray Monday morning, wedged between phone chargers and security cameras. The clerk, barely old enough to shave, asked what I needed it for. "Family stories," I said. That was half true. I did want to remember voices. I just had a darker reason now. At home, I tested it from Helen's old recliner. The little machine caught the refrigerator hum, the clock over the stove, even my own breathing when I didn't realize I was holding it. After 30 years inspecting fire scenes, I trusted evidence more than impressions. Brandon stopped by that Sunday to borrow my pickup. I clipped the recorder inside my shirt pocket before opening the door. When he and Kelsey left, I played it back. Her whisper came clear from the driveway. "He needs to let go of that house before he ruins everything." That was recording number 1 in April. Thanksgiving gave Kelsey the room she needed to stop pretending. Brandon brought her over to use my bigger oven because their kitchen was supposedly too crowded for the turkey. I stayed in the garage, sorting old inspection files, while the recorder ran beneath my flannel shirt. They thought the door between us swallowed sound. It's almost worth 460 now, Kelsey said. Maybe more by spring. Brandon sighed. Dad will leave it to me eventually. Eventually is for people without options, she replied. There are cleaner ways. A drawer opened. Papers slid across my kitchen table. Power of attorney first, then medical necessity. If we document confusion, missed appointments, unsafe driving, we can petition for guardianship. My hand froze over a box of Helen's Christmas ornaments. Brandon whispered, that sounds extreme. It sounds protective, Kelsey corrected. Courts love that word. I know people who can help file it properly. He didn't say no. That silence hurt worse than agreement. My son had become evidence. Marion Holt's office sat above a bakery on Main Street, which made the place smell too warm for the conversation I was about to have. I arrived Monday morning with the recorder, 3 unsigned forms Kelsey had left on my counter, and a stomach that felt packed with gravel. Marion had handled Helen's estate. She knew the difference between an old man being sensitive and a family building a trap. She listened without interrupting. When Kelsey said guardianship, Marion's eyes hardened. Elliot, she said, stopping the playback, this is elder abuse planning, financial exploitation, possible fraud conspiracy. Hearing a lawyer say, it made the room tilt. The house is still yours, she continued. Brandon has no legal claim. But if they forge a power of attorney or create false medical concerns, they can make your life very ugly before we stop them. What do I do? Nothing loud, Marion said. Keep recording, keep every paper. Let them build our case for us, starting today. 6 months taught me how betrayal sounds when people think an old man is too slow to notice. Recording 15 caught Brandon complaining that driving 12 minutes to check on me wasted gas. Recording 23 caught Kelsey telling him to keep me emotionally dependent, so I wouldn't make independent decisions about Cedar Ridge. Recording 31 caught my son saying, Dad's slipping. Maybe early dementia. I was not slipping. I was listening. Every file went into a folder. Every quote went into a notebook with date, time, location, and witnesses. 30 years as a fire inspector had taught me one rule: damage always leaves a pattern. Kelsey brought papers, often. Deed transfer forms, medical authorization forms, a power of attorney packet with yellow tabs already marking where my signature belonged. I never signed. I copied them, photographed them, and placed the originals in a locked metal box beside Helen's letters. By October, I had 52 recordings, 16 suspicious documents, and one terrible truth. My son was no longer confused. He was participating. By December, Brandon stopped asking for help and started assigning it. He handed me a folded sheet Saturday morning, like I was one of his contractors. Kelsey made a list of things you can knock out this week. 12 items. Clean the gutters. Seal the driveway. Rehang the garage shelves. Haul old boxes to the basement. Fix the loose porch rail. All at Cedar Ridge, the house my savings had bought and my name still owned. These are heavy jobs, I said. Voice level. Brandon shrugged. You're retired. Dad, you always said a man needs to stay useful. Kelsey appeared behind him with coffee she did not offer me. We're just trying to give you purpose. Purpose, Elliot. Handymen charge a fortune. So I worked. Tuesday, leaves and black sludge came out of their gutters, while Brandon took conference calls inside. Wednesday, I sealed their driveway under a cold wind. Thursday, I organized their garage while Kelsey told a neighbor I insisted on helping. Ruth Delgado saw me dragging boxes alone. Shouldn't Brandon be out there with you? Before I could answer, Kelsey called from the porch. He loves projects, keeps him young. The recorder in my pocket kept every word. Then came Thanksgiving. 21 guests filled Cedar Ridge with laughter, wine, and perfume. Kelsey's parents came from Cincinnati. Brandon's co-workers arrived with expensive bottles and loud opinions. I was placed in the kitchen before my coat was fully off. Dad, turkey needs lifting. Elliot, could you carve? Mr. Mercer, would you mind rinsing these glasses? I carried the turkey, carved it, served plates, filled water, cleared napkins, and washed dish after dish, while football roared. My back burned, my fingers cramped. Nobody noticed except Ruth, who had dropped off a pie and stayed too long near the doorway. One of Kelsey's friends whispered, "Isn't that Brandon's father?" Kelsey laughed softly. "He likes being useful. Otherwise, he just sits alone." At 10:17 p.m., after I left, recording 43 caught Brandon's voice. Dad didn't complain once. Kelsey answered, "Good. He's finally accepting his place." I sat alone in my truck outside their dark house and understood. They didn't want a father anymore. They wanted staff they could inherit from. Bank statements do not argue. They sit there, quiet and exact, until a man is ready to see what they are saying. The first charge was Lois. 486, then Costco. 729, Best Buy, 913, Target. 318, all stores within 3 miles of Cedar Ridge, all on days I had been at Brandon's house fixing something from Kelsey's list. I called the credit card company from my kitchen table. Mr. Mercer, the fraud agent said, these purchases were made with chip and PIN. Whoever used the card had physical access. My wallet had sat on Brandon's counter every time I worked there. Once, at a self-checkout, Kelsey had watched me enter my PIN while pretending to help with the screen. I drove over with the recorder running. Kelsey opened the door wearing a new cream coat. Nice coat, I said. Looks expensive. Brandon smiled too quickly. I got it for her. She deserves something nice. The Best Buy charge matched the designer camera bag sitting beside her purse. That was when disrespect became theft. And theft became a crime. December 20th, Brandon called at 7:42 p.m. His voice sounded like he was confirming a dentist appointment, not inviting his father to Christmas. Dinner's at 3, he said. Kelsey's family will be there, so please, don't make it awkward. I stared at Helen's photograph on the mantel. Awkward how? You know, he said. Long stories. Advice nobody asked for. And don't bring anything expensive for the kids. They have enough. 90 seconds later. He hung up. I sat in the quiet house, listening to the furnace breathe through the vents. Lily used to ask me to draw fire trucks for her. Noah used to climb into my lap and count the buttons on my shirt. Now they called me Grandpa Elliot only when prompted. Still, I wrapped their gifts. Sketch pencils for Lily, wooden building blocks for Noah. Small things. Chosen with love, not price tags. On Christmas morning, I wore a clean shirt and the gray tie Helen loved. The recorder was charged. Its memory was empty. Cedar Ridge was only 12 minutes away, but that drive felt like crossing into the last chapter of a family I had already lost. 23 cars lined Cedar Ridge Drive when I arrived, parked along both curbs like a neighborhood emergency nobody had reported yet. I parked 3 houses down and walked past the driveway I had sealed with my own hands. The recorder clicked on inside my jacket before Brandon opened the door. Hey, Dad, he said. No hug. No Merry Christmas, just a man letting in somebody expected to work. Inside, the house smelled of ham, cinnamon candles, and expensive perfume. Kelsey's parents stood by the fireplace. Brandon's co-workers laughed near the kitchen island. Lily and Noah sat under the tree with a mountain of gifts around them. Tablets, remote control cars, dolls that talked back, boxes stacked higher than their shoulders. My sketch pencils and wooden blocks looked small in my hands. Grandpa Elliot, Lily said politely, like she had practiced it. Noah waved once, then looked at Kelsey for approval. Kelsey swept toward me in cream cashmere and gold earrings. Elliot, I'm so glad you made it. The kitchen is a disaster, and you're always so capable. Before I had taken off my coat, I was at the sink, breakfast plates, mixing bowls, roasting pans, wine glasses. 23 people's worth of Christmas mess waited in hot water while laughter rolled from the living room. Brandon walked past me twice with a drink in his hand and never stopped. You're a lifesaver. Mr. Mercer, Kelsey's mother called. Brandon is lucky your father enjoys helping. He likes staying busy, Brandon answered. Retirement gets lonely. I scrubbed until my fingers wrinkled. I rinsed gravy from China, while men half my age discussed football 10 feet away. Nobody asked whether I wanted coffee. Nobody asked whether my back hurt. Nobody asked me to sit down. Around 4. Lily appeared beside me holding a glittery doll. Grandpa Elliot, are you opening presents with us? As soon as I finish these. Sweetheart, she tilted her head. Mommy said you like washing dishes because you're used to being by yourself. The sponge stopped in my hand. Used to being alone. As if loneliness was my hobby, not the room they kept locking me inside. I smiled because she was a child. Go enjoy Christmas, Lily. Behind me. More dishes hit the counter. I had finished the last roasting pan when Kelsey's voice drifted from the dining room. Sweetened by wine and confidence. Elliot has become such a burden, she said. The sponge slowed in my hand. One of her friends murmured. Is he sick? Not officially, Kelsey answered. But Brandon and I are watching him. He forgets things. Shows up uninvited. Gets emotional if we don't drop everything for him. Brandon sighed like a man carrying a noble weight. Dad doesn't understand boundaries anymore. I stood at the sink, water running over my knuckles, while the recorder in my pocket took down every word. Kelsey continued. A senior community would be better, safer. And, honestly, that old house he's in is too much for him. We've been preparing paperwork so the transition won't be messy. Paperwork. The yellow tabs, the false concern. The signatures she wanted. A man can survive disrespect. He can even survive being ignored by people he raised. But hearing your own son help paint you as incompetent so his wife can steal what you built, that reaches a different place in the chest. At 5:31, Brandon appeared in the kitchen doorway. His face was tight, rehearsed. Dad, come here a minute. I dried my hands slowly. The room beyond him had gone quiet. 23 people sat in the living room with plates in their laps and judgment already arranged on their faces. Kelsey stood beside the fireplace, one arm folded, the other hand touching her necklace like she was hosting a board meeting. Lily sat on the floor with her doll. Noah leaned against the couch, thumb near his mouth. Brandon cleared his throat. We need to talk about some changes, he said. I looked at my son. I did not look at the audience he had chosen. Okay, you've been coming around too much, he said. You put pressure on us. You expect attention every time you're here. Kelsey and I have tried to be patient, but it's affecting our family. Someone shifted in a chair. A fork tapped porcelain. Brandon swallowed, then said the words I knew were coming and still was not ready to hear. You're not welcome here anymore, Dad. The house seemed to lose all its heat. I thought of Helen in her hospital bed, asking me to take care of our boy. I thought of the $82,400 check, the funeral, the wedding, the gutters, the dishes, the little boy who used to sleep against my shoulder during thunderstorms. Then I thought of 52 recordings. I understand completely, son, I said. That was all. Kelsey looked disappointed, as if she had wanted tears. Brandon blinked, confused by the absence of a fight. You can call before visiting, Kelsey added. When we decide it's appropriate. Jake, Noah. My mind corrected, automatically started crying. Lily stared at her doll's plastic shoes. Nobody defended me, nobody stood up. That silence became the final witness. I picked up my coat and walked past the Christmas tree, past the mountain of gifts, past the framed family photo I had paid the photographer to take. Outside, the December air cut clean through my shirt. Ruth Delgado stood near her mailbox, pretending not to watch. Elliot, she called softly. Are you all right? I looked back at the glowing windows of my own house. Everything is clear now, I said. Then, I drove home, with Christmas lights shrinking in my rearview mirror, and Monday waiting like a switch I was finally ready to throw. Sunday night, I laid 6 months of my life across Helen's old kitchen table. The laptop sat in the center with 52 audio files arranged by date. Beside it, my notebook opened to pages of neat block handwriting: time, place, speaker, exact words. I had inspection habits in my bones. If a beam failed, you documented the crack. If a family failed, apparently you documented that too. I sorted the recordings into 4 folders: disrespect, manipulation, fraud planning, elder abuse. Then came the paper trail. 16 forms Kelsey had brought with little yellow tabs marking where my name should go. 2 medical authorization packets, 3 deed transfer forms, 1 power of attorney draft with my birthday typed wrong and my signature line waiting like a trap. The credit card statements formed their own stack. Lowe's, Costco, Best Buy, Target. Total unauthorized charges $13,760. I stared at that number longer than I should have. It was not the money. I had $94,000 in Helen's life insurance account, untouched because I had never been as helpless as they imagined. That was what hurt most. They had mistaken my quiet living for weakness. They had mistaken generosity for dependence. They had mistaken fatherhood for permission. Helen's engagement ring sat in its little blue box near the recorder. I touched the lid once, then picked up Marion Holt's business card. She had warned me that family fraud needed evidence strong enough to overcome sympathy. Now I had it. Enough to stop being the victim. Marion Holt opened her office before sunrise Monday. I was already in the parking lot, sitting behind the wheel with Helen's old quilt over a cardboard box full of evidence. She unlocked the door and looked at my face once. They did it. They did it in front of 23 people. Inside, I placed everything on her conference table. The recorder, the laptop, the notebook, the forged forms, the credit card statements. Marion listened to recording 52 without blinking. Kelsey's voice filled the room, smooth and poisonous, talking about paperwork, senior placement, and making transitions easier. When Brandon said I needed firmer boundaries, Marion closed her eyes. Elliot, she said, this is enough. She reviewed the signatures under a magnifying lamp. Forgery, attempted property transfer, financial exploitation, social isolation, elder abuse, and with the credit card charges, likely felony theft. The words sounded official, almost clean. They did not feel clean. Marion picked up the phone and called the district attorney's office. Her voice changed when she spoke to prosecutors. All steel and procedure. Then she opened another folder. Because the deed is in your name. Brandon and Kelsey are occupants without a lease. We file eviction immediately. Criminal complaint today. Protective order today. Bank notification today. She slid 3 forms across the table. I signed where she pointed. For 6 months, they had treated me like a helpless old man. At 8:16 Monday morning, the law disagreed. Tuesday morning, I gave Brandon one final chance because a father should never mistake revenge for justice. I called at 8:03. The recorder sat beside the phone, blinking red. Brandon answered with a sigh. Dad, what now? I want to talk before this becomes something we can't take back. There's nothing to talk about, he said. You embarrassed us on Christmas by refusing to respect our boundaries. I looked at Helen's photograph on the kitchen wall. I washed dishes for hours. Brandon. Then you threw me out in front of my grandchildren. Kelsey's voice cut in. Speakerphone. Of course, Elliot. This is exactly the problem. You twist everything into victimhood. We gave you simple instructions, and you still tried to insert yourself into our family time. Our family, I asked. Silence. Then Brandon said, You know what I mean. I love you, I told him. Both of you. If you want to sit down, apologize honestly, and rebuild this with respect, my door is open. Kelsey laughed. Not nervously. Not sadly. She laughed like I had told a joke at my own funeral. The lonely old man still thinks he gets to negotiate, she said. Brandon, please handle this. My son's voice came back colder than hers. Lose this number. Dad. Find friends your own age. Stop forcing yourself on people who don't want you around. The call ended. I sat there with my hand on the receiver, feeling something inside me go still. Mercy had been offered. They had refused it. The courthouse opened at 8:30 Wednesday morning. But Marion and I were already on the steps when the first clerk unlocked the glass doors. She carried the evidence binder. I carried a second copy. Sealed in a fireproof document bag I had used back when my work meant investigating burned buildings. Funny how life teaches a man to protect evidence before he knows what evidence will cost him. District Attorney Rachel Torres met us in a small conference room with no decorations except a flag and a wall clock that sounded too loud. She looked younger than I expected, but her eyes were sharp in the way prosecutors' eyes have to be. Marion played the recordings in order. Kelsey talking about guardianship. Brandon agreeing I was slipping. Kelsey explaining paperwork. Brandon saying I needed limits. The Christmas recording, where 23 people heard my son throw me out of a house he did not own. Rachel did not interrupt. When the final clip ended, she folded her hands. These are admissible. One-party consent state, Marion said. Mr. Mercer was present for every recording. Rachel nodded, then examined the forged signatures, the credit card report, the transfer forms, the timeline from my notebook. This shows planning, not confusion, not a family misunderstanding. Those words landed harder than I expected. A detective from Financial Crimes joined us 20 minutes later. Deputy Carl Whitaker arrived after that. Tall, gray-haired, calm in the way men get after delivering bad news for 25 years. Elder exploitation gets priority here, Whitaker said, flipping through the binder, especially with forged property documents. Rachel began naming charges like she was laying bricks: identity theft, attempted fraud, conspiracy, elder financial exploitation. Arrest warrants would be prepared. Emergency protective orders would block access to my bank accounts, credit cards, and house records. Marion filed the eviction packet immediately because Cedar Ridge belonged to me. And Brandon and Kelsey had no lease, no ownership, no legal ground beneath their feet. What about Lily and Noah? I asked. Whitaker's expression softened. Child services will be notified, not to punish the kids, to make sure they're safe while their parents deal with this. By noon, case numbers existed. By 1, the bank had been notified. By 2, the sheriff's department had a service plan. Whitaker drew the timeline on a yellow legal pad. 24-hour notice, Thursday morning, 9 sharp. Patrol units first, then moving crew. We keep it controlled. Walking out, I felt no joy. Only weight. For 6 months, Brandon and Kelsey had built a trap around me. Now the courthouse had turned it around. and every lock clicked shut from the outside. I had never wanted power over my son. I only wanted the law to finally see what love had been hiding. First National Bank had smelled fraud before I walked in. Marion sent the protective order ahead, and by Wednesday afternoon, a manager named Sarah Chen was waiting in a glass office with my statements spread across her desk. She had already marked the suspicious purchases in yellow. Lowe's, Costco, Best Buy, Target, she said. Same pattern every time. Physical card access. PIN used. Locations near Cedar Ridge. All on days you were working there. Hearing it from a banker felt colder than hearing it from my own records. Numbers have no feelings. They simply line up and testify. Total unauthorized charges are $13,760. Sarah continued. We're reversing them today. New cards, new account numbers, new PINs. Your old cards are dead. Marion slid the court order closer. And Brandon and Kelsey. Sarah typed for nearly a minute. Her expression changed. They bank here too. Joint checking, savings, small investment account. I said nothing. They've made 3 large withdrawals since Monday, she said. 1 cashier's check request. 2 attempted transfers. It looks like they're preparing to move money fast. Marion's voice sharpened. Freeze them. Sarah nodded once. Already authorized under the protective order. Effective immediately. They cannot withdraw, transfer, close accounts, or access any product connected to Mr. Mercer's identity or property. A strange calm moved through me. For months, they had tried to make me dependent. Now their own exit door was closing. Across town, eviction logistics moved just as cleanly. Allied Relocation Services handled court-ordered removals, the kind nobody advertises on friendly billboards. The manager, Tom Bradley, met us beside 2 white moving trucks in their lot. 3 movers, he said. 2 trucks. 1 6-month storage unit. Personal belongings only. We inventory everything. No damage, no insults, no drama. I don't want their things destroyed, I said. Tom looked at me like he had heard worse men ask for worse outcomes. Then we do this with dignity. That word mattered. They had stripped mine piece by piece. But I would not become them to get it back. Marion reviewed the timeline. Sheriff serves papers Thursday at 9. Arrest warrants at the same time. Moving crew arrives at 10. 1 hour for law enforcement to secure the scene. Child services to contact relatives. And Brandon and Kelsey to understand the house was no longer theirs to command. Tom handed me the storage contract. You're paying 6 months. Yes. Even after everything, I would not throw my son's life onto a curb. I was drawing a boundary, not burning a body. By sunset, their cards were frozen. Their accounts were watched. The trucks were scheduled, and Cedar Ridge was waiting. Justice, I learned, is quietest right before it knocks. Wednesday evening, at 7:00 I made the call Brandon should have made to me years earlier. He answered on the second ring. Dad, I thought I told you to stop calling. You did, I said. This is a 24-hour warning. Kelsey came on immediately. A warning for what, Elliot? The forged deed forms, the power of attorney packet, the credit card charges, the conversations about declaring me incompetent, the 6 months of recordings. The line went so silent I could hear my refrigerator humming. Then Brandon gave a short laugh that did not sound real. You recorded us 52 times. You can't do that, Kelsey snapped. That's illegal. You need consent. One-party consent state, I said. I was present every time. Marion Holt confirmed it before recording number 2. Another silence. Softer this time. Fear has a different shape than anger. Marion Holt, Brandon asked. My attorney, elder law, she has everything. Kelsey tried to recover first. You're confused. You misunderstood ordinary family planning. No, I said. I understood perfectly. So did the district attorney. That landed. Brandon's breathing changed. The boy who once cried into my shoulder after Helen's funeral was somewhere under that panic, but I could not reach him anymore. Dad, he said. Voice suddenly careful. Maybe Christmas got out of hand. We all said things. You threw me out of my own house in front of my grandchildren. It's not your house, Kelsey said. The property record disagrees. She cursed under her breath. Tomorrow morning at 9, I said. Answer the door. Wait, Brandon said quickly. Maybe we can sit down. Work this out like family. I closed my eyes. Too late. Sun. Thursday arrived cold and bright. At 9:00 a.m., 3 patrol cars rolled onto Cedar Ridge Drive and stopped in front of the house I had paid for. I sat across the street in my truck, hands around a paper cup of gas station coffee, watching Deputy Carl Whitaker walk up the sidewalk. Ruth Delgado appeared at her front window. Frank Bell stepped onto his porch. Neighborhoods always know when trouble has decided to wear a badge. Brandon opened the door in sweatpants. Hair flattened on one side. Even from across the street, I saw the color drain from his face. Whitaker held up his identification. His voice carried through the quiet morning. Brandon Mercer and Kelsey Mercer. We have warrants related to elder financial exploitation, identity theft, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. Kelsey pushed into the doorway wrapped in a robe. This is ridiculous. He gave us permission. Ma'am, Whitaker said, you have the right to remain silent. The words changed the temperature of the street. Brandon looked past the deputies and found my truck. For 1 second, our eyes met through the windshield. I saw confusion give way to understanding. He finally knew I had not left Christmas dinner defeated. I had left finished. This is our home, Brandon shouted. You can't remove us from our own home. Whitaker opened a folder. County property records list Elliot Mercer as sole legal owner. You are occupants without a lease. Eviction notice is being served simultaneously. Kelsey started arguing about paperwork, but the first handcuff clicked before she finished the sentence. No, she said, suddenly small. No, you don't understand. We understand the recordings, Whitaker replied. We understand the forged documents. We understand the charges. Brandon backed away until another officer stopped him. I didn't forge anything, he said. That was Kelsey. I didn't know how far she went. The officer looked at him without expression. We have your voice on the recordings, sir. That was when Lily appeared at the upstairs window. Noah beside her in dinosaur pajamas. My chest tightened. They were innocent, and justice still scared children. A child services worker arrived minutes later to coordinate temporary care with Kelsey's parents. Nobody touched the kids harshly. Nobody raised a voice. At 10:00, 2 white moving trucks turned onto Cedar Ridge Drive. Kelsey, in handcuffs, stared as movers stepped out with boxes. Brandon looked at me again. This time, I did not look away anymore. Allied relocation began at 10:04. Tom Bradley's movers entered Cedar Ridge with clipboards, labels, and the careful quiet of men touching wreckage. Brandon and Kelsey sat in separate patrol cars while their life became inventory numbers. Sofa, bedroom, boxes, framed wedding photos, children's books. Kelsey watched her jewelry case carried out and screamed that I was stealing from her. Deputy Whitaker did not raise his voice. Everything personal is being documented and stored. Ma'am. I stood on the sidewalk with Marion beside me. Ruth Delgado watched from her porch, one hand over her mouth. Frank Bell pretended to rake frozen leaves. Nobody cheered. Real justice does not sound like applause. It sounds like tape sealing boxes. At noon, a locksmith changed every exterior lock. At 1:30, Child Services confirmed Lily and Noah were safe with Kelsey's parents. At 3:16, the last truck door rolled shut. Tom handed Brandon a storage address through the patrol car window. 6 months prepaid. After that, you'll need to transfer the unit. Brandon stared at the card like it was written in another language. When the patrol cars pulled away, Cedar Ridge went silent. I walked inside alone. The kitchen still smelled of Christmas ham and dish soap. The sink was empty now. The counters were bare. My footsteps echoed through rooms where I had been treated like hired help. I touched the banister I had tightened in October and the wall I had patched after Noah threw a toy truck too hard. For a moment, grief stood beside me like a shadow. Then Marion placed the keys in my palm. It's yours again, she said. It was always mine, I answered. 2 months later, the courtroom made everything official. Judge Catherine Morrison had spent 30 years listening to families explain why cruelty should be excused by blood. She did not look impressed. The courtroom smelled of polished wood, paper, and fear. Brandon sat in a gray suit that hung wrong on his shoulders. Kelsey wore a navy dress and no expression. Their attorneys had negotiated pleas because the evidence left them nowhere to stand. 52 recordings, 16 suspicious documents, forged signatures, bank records, credit card fraud. A Christmas rejection witnessed by 23 people. Judge Morrison adjusted her glasses. Family concern does not permit theft. Caregiving language does not excuse coercion. Age does not make a person available for exploitation. Kelsey's sentence came first. 18 months in state prison, with 12 suspended, 6 months to serve. 2 years probation, restitution for fraudulent charges, 200 hours community service, and reporting to the mortgage and real estate licensing boards. Kelsey's face finally moved. My career, she whispered. The judge looked at her. You used your professional knowledge to target an elderly family member. That career is relevant. Brandon received 1-year probation, restitution responsibility, elder abuse counseling, and 150 hours of community service, no prison. Because the court accepted he had been influenced, but influence did not mean innocent. When he turned to look at me, I saw shame trying to become an apology and failing halfway. Outside the courthouse, February wind cut across the steps. Reporters did not know our names, but local legal blogs carried the case as an elder fraud warning. Kelsey's employer terminated her before sunset. The licensing board suspended her pending revocation. Brandon's financial services firm sent a brief email next morning, resigned for personal reasons. Access revoked. People found out anyway. Kelsey's friends, the same women who had watched me wash dishes, stopped inviting her anywhere. Brandon's coworkers learned why he had vanished. Neighbors who had seen me hauling boxes and cleaning gutters understood. Ruth brought soup and an apology. We should have spoken sooner, she said. I accepted the soup, not the blame. Marion later told me prosecutors wanted to use the case in elder protection training. Anonymous, she promised. Educational. I said yes. If my humiliation could become someone else's warning. Cedar Ridge had taken enough from me and given something back. The weeks after court were quieter than I expected. No victory party, no champagne. Just mornings where my phone did not ring with demands, afternoons where nobody handed me a list, evenings where I could eat soup at my own table without feeling like I had failed somebody. Then the neighbors started coming. Ruth Delgado brought lasagna and stood on my porch with tears in her eyes. We saw more than we admitted, she said. I'm sorry. Frank Bell fixed the loose gate without being asked. The Hendersons across the street invited me to their Sunday barbecue. At first, I almost said no out of habit. Then I remembered I was allowed to be wanted without being useful. St. Mark's Lutheran became the first place I could sit in a room and not wonder what people needed from me. Pastor David asked if I would share my experience during Elder Protection Sunday. I stood at the lectern with my hands around the wood and told them the truth without names. Abuse doesn't always shout, I said. Sometimes it uses words like concern, safety, and boundaries while reaching for your wallet. People listened. Some cried. Afterward, 3 older members asked for Marion Holt's number. That was when I understood Cedar Ridge had not only taken something from me, it had given me a warning I could pass forward. In June, I sold the house to a young couple with twin girls who ran through the backyard laughing before the inspection was finished. I watched them measure the kitchen for a breakfast table and felt no bitterness. A house should hold joy, not evidence. I moved into Heritage Grove, an independent senior community on the edge of town. Not assisted living, not surrender. Just a clean apartment with good light, coffee mornings, Tuesday book club, and men who argued about baseball like the country depended on it. The quiet changed there. It was no longer punishment. It was peace. One afternoon, I wrote Brandon a letter on Helen's old stationery. Brandon, respect is built daily. If you ever choose honesty over pride, my door is open. Dad, no accusation, no speech. No forgiveness cheap enough to be mistaken for permission. He never answered. Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he was angry. Maybe becoming decent takes longer than losing everything. I do not know. But I know this love can survive distance, and dignity can survive betrayal if you stop confusing silence with weakness. So, if someone you love is making you feel like a burden, document everything. Save the papers. Trust your instincts. Call a lawyer. Ask for help before shame locks the door. Quiet dignity is not weakness. Sometimes it is justice. Standing up slowly, putting on its coat, and finally walking out.